August 1971. The dollar cut its last tie to gold, ending an era overnight. Today, central banks are making their biggest gold grab in decades. Over $40 billion in just 18 months. This is not diversification. It is a warning from the world's most powerful institutions that something fundamental is about to break. What secret do they see in these mountains of gold, and how close are we to the next collapse? August 15, 1971. President Nixon faces the nation and announces the suspension of dollar convertibility into gold. Overnight, the world's anchor currency loses its hard backing. The promise of gold at $35 an ounce is gone, replaced by a system built on faith alone. This was more than a policy shift, it was a global rupture. The rules of money changed with a single speech. What followed set a pattern that has repeated ever since. When trust in the system wavers, gold is where the most informed actors run first. Not after the headlines scream crisis, but before. The signal is always the same. Accumulation begins quietly, months or even a year and a half ahead of the breaking point. In the wake of Nixon's announcement, gold did not just rise. It surged from $35 an ounce to $800 an ounce by 1980, a 2,200% leap. The warning was not in the news. It was in the flow of gold itself. This is the diagnostic mantra. When official buyers, governments, and central banks move into gold with deliberate speed, the clock starts. The window is rarely wider than a year and a half before the full consequences hit. The pattern is not perfect, but it is persistent. Gold buying is the signal, not the aftermath. Every major currency unraveling since 1971 has shown this lead time. The stakes are not theoretical. They are measured in weeks, months, and the silent migration of reserves before the world catches up. This is not just history. It is a rule that still governs the actions of those who understand what comes next. The gold signal is always there for those willing to see it. Roman emperors faced a simple problem: too many debts, not enough silver. The denarius, once nearly pure, lost its shine year by year. Under Nero, the coin still held 98% silver. By the time of Caracalla, purity had fallen below 50%. Each round of debasement drove those with means to stash gold and older, heavier coins out of circulation. Archaeologists have unearthed hoards buried during these years, evidence that as confidence faded, wealth retreated into the hardest form available. The state kept minting promises, and the prudent hid gold. Centuries later, Spain ruled the world's richest empire on paper. Galleons hauled silver and gold from the Americas, but royal debts soared even faster. Bankruptcies hit in 1557, 1575, and 1596. Genoese bankers and local elites stopped lending to the crown and shifted into bullion, land, and foreign assets as the monarchy lurched toward default. Spanish edicts tried to force metal back into circulation, but capital always found its escape. Each crisis saw hard money vanish from the market, hidden by those who saw the writing on the wall. In Weimar Germany, the story played out in hyperspeed. By 1922, the mark was losing value by the week. Those with access moved savings into gold and foreign currency, leaving latecomers to face breadlines and wheelbarrows of worthless notes. The gold price in marks soared long before the final collapse in 1923. Savers who waited for headlines were wiped out. Those who moved early survived. Across empires and centuries, the signal repeats. As trust drains from paper, gold becomes the last refuge. The pattern never cares for borders or eras, only for the consequences of ignoring it. Central banks have pushed their gold buying into territory that defies precedent and, for many, logic. In just the last 12 months, official gold purchases crossed 1,037 tons, over $40 billion at current prices. That is not a rounding error in the global system. It is a break from the past decade, when annual buying averaged less than half that amount. China's central bank alone reported adding 225 tons, bringing its official reserves to more than 2,200 tons. Yet analysts tracking mine output, imports, and off-exchange flows say the true figure could be double, hidden in state banks and sovereign funds. Meanwhile, the United States sits on 8,133 tons, a number unchanged since the early 1970s. The world's biggest holder, but also the most static. The contrast is sharper when set against the fiscal backdrop. America's federal debt now stands at $36 trillion, nearly matching the entire annual gross domestic product of $28 trillion. Interest payments are projected to outpace defense spending this year, a first in modern history. The math is simple. The cost of borrowing is climbing faster than the economy can grow. Every new dollar of debt is backed not by gold, but by the promise that tomorrow's taxpayers will cover today's bills. China's approach is mechanical. Export goods, collect dollars, swap dollars for gold. Every iPhone shipped, every container of toys, electronics, and machinery generates dollars that feed directly into state gold accumulation. The U.S. trade deficit with China, $382 billion last year, translates into a steady outflow of claims on future American production, recycled into metal that sits outside the reach of sanctions or currency devaluation. Gold plays a central role in that cycle. The numbers do not add up in the old way. Gold is flowing east, debt is piling up west, and the world's largest economy has stopped adding to its reserves. Instead, it issues IOUs. Central banks, led by rivals and uneasy allies alike, are buying insurance at a pace that the official narrative struggles to explain. Dollars flow out of the United States with every trade deficit, but the journey does not end at the docks. Each year, $382 billion leaves the United States for China alone, payment for electronics, machinery, and consumer goods. Those dollars do not pile up in Beijing's central bank vaults. Instead, they are quietly funneled through a network of state banks and financial arms, rerouted into gold markets in London, Zurich, and Dubai. The process is deliberate. Chinese state banks, acting as proxies, purchase gold in bulk, often in 400-ounce bars, far from the public eye. The gold is then shipped, sometimes recast, and eventually lands in vaults controlled by the Chinese state but not immediately reported as official reserves. This is not a simple swap. It is a pipeline designed to turn America's debt into China's hard assets, bypassing the transparency of global financial reporting. The same dollars that once propped up the United States Treasury now buy metal that sits beyond the reach of sanctions or currency devaluation. Trade data shows a steady stream. Swiss refineries export to Hong Kong, Dubai acts as a transit hub, and the final destination is often masked by customs codes and indirect routes. The official figures understate the real accumulation, as gold bought by state banks or sovereign wealth funds can remain off the central bank's books for years. The contradiction is structural. The United States funds its consumption with borrowed money, while rivals use those same dollars to amass reserves that cannot be frozen or inflated away. As these flows compound, the system that once guaranteed American financial dominance now quietly finances the architecture of its own replacement. Official statements frame the gold rush as prudent diversification, a hedge against uncertainty, nothing more. But technical publications from the ECB and the World Gold Council describe gold as unique, an asset not tied to any government, carrying no credit risk and immune to default. Surveys of reserve managers confirm this logic. In a world of record debt and rising sanctions, gold's appeal is its independence from the promises of others. Federal Reserve research acknowledges scenarios where the dollar's reserve share could fall, even as public reassurances point to its current 58% share. The words are careful, but the actions reveal deeper concern. Financial historians studying reserve currency shifts notice that when the dominant currency's share of global reserves drops toward 1/3, its supremacy becomes fragile. No single number triggers collapse, but below that range, confidence can drain fast if credible alternatives exist. At today's pace, China's official gold reserves would still trail the US for years. Yet if hidden purchases are as large as some analysts suspect, the gap could close much sooner. Even a partial shift of trillions in foreign-held dollars could drive import prices higher overnight, accelerating a crisis before most realize what's happening. As central banks exchange paper promises for gold, global power quietly shifts. The world's monetary foundation is being rewritten behind closed vaults, not in open debates. When trust in currency erodes, change comes fast. The real warning isn't in what's bought, it is in what is being quietly abandoned. What would you do?